So, a couple weeks ago, there was another mass shooting, this time in a mall in Allen, Texas. Now, mass shootings in and by themselves are not unusual in the United States. They happen all the time in the United States. We basically have more than one mass shooting per day in the United States. So, that's not a very unique thing to talk about. But what makes this one unusual is not the fact that it was done by a white supremacist, because that actually happens all the time too. White supremacists and Nazis and shit are kind of notorious for being mass shooters. That is not an unusual thing. No. What makes this one unusual is that the white supremacist in question was not white. So I am talking about Mauricio Garcia, 33 years old. He was the shooter in this case. He was also of Mexican descent. And there's been a lot of confusion in the right wing over this guy, a lot of denial, which I think is worth exploring a little bit. So first off, let's talk about what actually happened. Guy goes into a mall, kills 8 people, and I believe was shot to death by a security guard. I think that's what happened here. And shortly after, this guy bites the bullet after going on his little murder spree. Details start coming out about him. That's what happens when you're a mass shooter, like it or not. That actually is one of the motivations for people who are mass shooters, by the way. They know that they're going to get a little bit of notoriety because people are going to be looking them up and stuff like that, and finding out who they are and all that. That is one of the motives as to why people engage in these sort of rampage killings, right? And I think it would do a lot to stop that kind of thing if we, as a society, made it a thing to where we just didn't glorify these fucks. They should seriously. I mean, I don't know if you can pass a law doing that. I don't know if that infringes on freedom of speech or not, but or freedom of the press, if that infringes on freedom of the press to do this. But it would definitely go a long way to stop this shit. That if, like, say, news outlets didn't mention the names of these people, didn't mention anything like that, because what happened in this case, and happens in a lot of these cases, is that these assholes write manifestos and shit like that. And then people want to go look them up because you got news, the news people, right? Then you got news junkies and stuff. And then you got political junkies who are out there trying to blame it on the other side, shit like that. Culture warriors and shit trying to say that this was all due to wokeism or this was whatever, right? Trying to blame every fucking thing that ever happens on their political enemies. So that's part of the motivation here. It's very shitty to say, but that's definitely a thing. I mean, hell, I'm even contributing to it right now with this video. We are in a culture war. Sorry, we are. It would be naive to deny at this point. And we need to set the record straight. At least I think so. So here's the thing about this guy. He was a Latino white supremacist. It came out shortly after the rampage. He was wearing a patch on his jacket with the letters RWDS, stands for Right Wing Death Squad. This is a patch which is very, very popular with various alt-right and right-wing asshole types. People like Proud Boys and stuff like that were wearing these patches on their coats and flak jackets and things when they were at the January 6th insurrection, for example. Later, it was revealed that he had Nazi tattoos, including the SS emblem and a big ol' swastika. So let me show you guys here. This is a tweet about Mauricio Garcia. Basically, they learned as Mauricio Garcia went in the past months and got a fresh new Nazi tattoos and a vest. Then he made an Adam Lanza style type smile video. He planted tons of Nazi rhetoric. He was a furry incel. He liked anime. He craved attention and planned it out. This is true. This is the guy's. This is his tattoos. Apparently, really loved the state of Texas. He had SS shit. He had Nazi shit. This was his little avatar here, little happy face with a Hitler stash on it. You know, making playlists with. This is the Sandy Hook killer. This guy Adam Lanza, right? So he's admiring mass shooters of all types. This is his thing here. Psychovision face reveal. Seems to be a big fan of Hitler. Seemed to like Dragon Ball Z there. So, yeah. I mean, the thing is, this is the guy. He's got the SS tattoos. He's got the swastika tattoos. He's also not white. You can tell just by looking at his skin here. He was of Mexican descent. There is a lot of misconceptions going around, rumors and stuff like that, that this guy was a gang member. The right wing in this country went into damage control and are trying to blame it on anything except what the actual truth is. Trying to claim that this guy was part of MS-13. He had a tattoo on his hand of a MS-13 gang thing. That's not what that was at all. This is the hand tattoo. I'll show to you guys here. There should be, here we go. Here's his other tattoos. This is the guy. This is his face here. Heavy metal. Okay. They did say he was a furry also. And if you look at this tattoo on his hand here, this sort of D with the little palm thing over it, right? The conspiracy theory is that this is what's called a Tango Blast gang tattoo. That's what the right-wing chuds are trying to tell us, right? That, of course, is not true. What this is the Dallas City logo, right? In fact, we can just kind of go here. I'm going to look up Dallas City logo. I'm going to search off screen so you guys don't see my search suggestions here. Let's go back. This is the Dallas City logo. See that? Little tree in there. See that? Exact same thing. Okay. So, no, the guy was not part of MS-13. Another thing is that he was also a legal American citizen. This is another thing that the MAGA chuds are trying to say that he was undocumented, illegal alien or whatever, and that he'd been kicked out of the country 17 times and all this other shit, stuff like that. Not true. He is a legal citizen of the United States. Apparently born and raised here. At least, I don't know. I think so. I could be wrong about the born and raised here part. But he most definitely was a citizen of the United States, not an undocumented person of any kind, of any sort. So that's some other shit that they're trying to spread around. He was a fan of the Libs of TikTok, fan of Tim Pool, Nick Fuentes, and of the Daily Stormer. I'm sure you guys all know who those people are. No need for me to go into any detail. I mean, those are like basically the most notorious white supremacist assholes on the internet at this point. So, especially when it comes to the Daily Stormer, those guys have been around for decades. I mean, ever since there was an internet, Daily Stormer's been out there spreading white supremacist hate. So apparently this guy was a big fan of those assholes. So they found all of this stuff on a Russian social media site called Odoklansky. Odonoklensky. I can't pronounce the shit. Anyway, apparently he didn't really have any friends on this site, though. And he was just sort of using it as a journal, personal sort of journal kind of thing. Why would a American citizen of Mexican descent who's a white supremacist use a Russian social media site as a journal? Why would he do that? Well, white supremacists often use Russian websites like this because there's no moderation. You can basically post whatever the hell you want on sites like this, and no one's going to do anything, no one's going to say anything. right? Especially when it comes to Nazi shit. Nobody cares when it comes to in Russia. So that's why he was using it. So he didn't really have any friends on the site, but he was just using it to post pictures of guns and Nazi crap like that. And also seemed to be using it to document his plan to engage in the vast shooting at the mall. Apparently, he also posted pictures of the mall on this little journal of his. He also apparently went to the mall multiple times and kind of staked it out. Was checking to see when there was the highest amount of traffic so that he can do the most damage. So this was most definitely a premeditated thing. And also was posting incel shit there as well. Described himself as an incel. And was also apparently a furry. So when all of this stuff came to light, of course, the conservative heads just totally fucking exploded. And they refused to believe that this was a real thing. There was an account on Twitter called End Wokeness. It's funny how all of this shit always makes its way back to Twitter, right? There's an account called End Wokeness that basically said that this was a psyop, which Elon Musk agreed to. Elon Musk always has to instantly jump in whenever any white supremacist piece of shit tags him and agree, which ends up artificially boosting these tweets. For any of you guys out there who are surprised that Elon Musk is a Nazi, well, I won't call him a Nazi, but definitely seems to have some racist shit going on with him. I mean, is it really that big of a leap? Find a white person, grew up in South Africa with apartheid and shit like that, might be someone who's just a little bit racist? I mean, that doesn't really sound like that big of a leap to me. Here's another thing that happened, is that the right-wingers started posting pictures of the wrong guy. So this is our infamous dude Cat Turd, the biggest piece of shit on Twitter, posting the pictures of the wrong guy. This, of course, is not Mauricio Garcia. We just saw what Mauricio Garcia looked like. This is a different Mauricio Garcia. And so all of the right-wingers started sharing pictures of this dude all over the place and saying, hey, this guy was not a white supremacist. Cat Turd's comment, of course, just think when the disgusting lying pigs in our media can't get any worse, trying to claim that the whole thing is a lie, that it was a psyop of some kind. In real life, the media are not the ones lying. Cat Turd is the one who, of course, is lying. Here's another one by Cat Turd, some whataboutism here. The FBI, we can't release the Transgender Mass Murderers Manifesto because it would be too harmful to the public. Also, the FBI, here's this Hispanic white supremacist and his entire life story, which coincidentally mentions conservative accounts we released in 5 minutes. He's referring to that shooter a few weeks back who happened to be transgender, which was the first time a transgender person ever engaged in a rampage killing, a mass shooting like this, ever. Right. There were a couple of others who will claim that there were mass shootings. No. The other instances, I looked into them, of supposed transgender mass shooters are bullshit. No, they were not. Those people were not transgender. Right. This is probably the only instance of an actual transgender person engaging in a mass shooting. It's funny how they won't shut up about that one. Right. Funny how the right wing, they've been posting memes and shit about that for weeks. All of the other mass shootings that happen on a daily fucking basis, they're completely quiet about all the other ones. And then when one happens with a fucking Nazi in it, they're suddenly all in denial. Oh, it's a psyop. The fuck out of here. Right. But here's the thing about that. Yes, this transgender mass shooter, they did have a manifesto. The FBI did not make it public. You know why? Because it wasn't public to begin with. It's called evidence. One day it may get leaked. One day it may come out. But it's evidence. It was basically a journal. It wasn't even really a manifesto. It was a journal that this person kept. There's no need for that to be public. Well, this guy, Mauricio, whatever the fuck his name is, posted his shit all over the place on the internet for everybody to see. So the FBI didn't release shit. The media went out and found this stuff. And a lot of it is still up. His videos and crap, you can still get it. It's still out there. Like I said, like, you know, Russian social media sites don't give a fuck. They don't, you know, like if usually like if there's like a Facebook or a YouTube channel and a guy engages in a fucking mass killing, they take that stuff down. But Russia, they don't fucking care. Right? So it's still up. You can still find it. You can still find this guy's videos and shit. It's still out there. I found one on Google image search after 3 seconds. It's like, so no, the FBI, it's not the FBI covering up anything. That's bullshit. Complete, total fucking bullshit. Anyway, we talked about the Dallas City logo and all that crap. So yeah, they're kind of melting down over this guy because they can't understand that someone who is not white would be a fascist or even a white supremacist. Now, non-white fascists are not a new thing at all. There have been non-white fascists since fascism was a thing. I mean, there were even non-white people who actually fought with Nazi Germany. Believe it or not, right? They were called the German Free Arab Legion. I actually did a stream where I went into the very detailed history of these guys about a year ago. So I won't go into too much detail about it. You know, you can look up my old stream. I'll put it down in the links after this video hits YouTube if you want to watch it. Long story short, the Arab Free Legion was a basically group of Arab volunteers who were recruited by Nazi Germany, and they fought basically mostly in Greece and Northern Africa during World War II. Long story short, there was a group in Iraq at the time called the Golden Square, who in April of 1941 overthrew the pro-British regime in Iraq. Because this is like right when the war started. And these guys basically petitioned Germany because Germany and England were fighting a world war, and petitioned Germany to be allies. And so this kind of led to the name for it is the Anglo-Iraqi War in May of 1941, which only lasted about a month. Basically, it took, by the end of May, the British had disposed of these guys out of Iraq. But in the meantime, Hitler pledged to send air support. I could not see if there was any actual proof that any air support was actually provided. But he did send down a couple of agents to recruit people into a legion, basically. And that's where the Arab Free Legion came from. They eventually shipped out to Greece, and they were put under the command of a guy named Helmuth Felmy. And they continued recruiting and ultimately created 2 units of Arab soldiers who were fighting under the command of Nazi Germany. Couldn't really find much in the way of ideology for these guys, so I don't really know if these guys were ideologically aligned with the Nazis. A couple of sources I found said that they were. A couple that I found said that they were just guys looking for work, that it was just joining the army because they were fighting for their country or whatever, and then they can get paid and get 3 hots and a cot or whatever. A couple of sources said that it was a combination of the two. So I don't really know how much in the way of, say, anti-Semitism was a factor in these guys joining up with the Nazis or something like that. Well, that's sort of not determinate. One thing to remember, though, is that at this point in time, there very much were anti-Semitic conspiracy theories running rampant throughout the world and starting to kind of take hold in the Middle East. Right. Now, anti-Semitism really wasn't that big of a deal at this point. That didn't really take off until after the war and the formation of Israel. That's when you got like some serious anti-Semitism happening. But it was still a thing. It was still a thing. You got to remember at around this time there were conspiracy theories out there, things like the protocols of the Elders of Zion and stuff like that. That was all still out there, and a lot of these conspiracy theories were not debunked sufficiently at this time either. The internet was really not a thing at this point. So it was much, much harder to debunk stuff like this. And plus, you had people like famous people spreading these sort of conspiracy theories. People like Henry Ford, for example. He published like that the entire book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, published the whole thing in his like own little private newspaper, stuff like that. So there already was some penetration of that kind of thing into the Middle East. So it's still not really known how much of that was a factor for these guys joining up, but it very much could have been, right? Now, who knows also what would have happened after the war if these guys would have, say, been awarded German citizenship or something like that, or if they would have been shipped back to their countries, whatever. Who knows? Nobody really knows or can't really say one way or the other whether these people, if they stayed in Europe, would have been subjected to the same kind of persecution that other non-white people were under the final solution there. We can't really say. But that doesn't change the fact that these guys fought for Nazi Germany. And the Nazis were not secretive about their racial motivations there. So pretty sure all it really would have took was just somebody paying attention to realize that, hey, these are people are highly racist and shit like that, and actually looking into the Nazi ideology, that kind of thing. So who really knows? But those are just the facts. The facts are there were non-white Nazis even during World War II. Non-white people who fought with the Nazis. Right. White supremacism and Nazis in particular, Nazi gangs, are a major problem in South America. That is a big time problem. All through South America, in particular Brazil, they have a problem with white supremacist gangs. Where this comes from, in particular Brazil, is because there was basically after in the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a lot of German immigration into South America, and in particular Brazil, right? A lot of German sort of communities of people down there. And during World War II, Hitler and the Nazis would recruit from these communities as well, right? So nowadays, excuse me, nowadays in Brazil you have a big problem with like white supremacist Nazi gangs, and a lot of these people kind of claim ancestorship from these German immigrant communities. But in real life, it's not so much a racial thing. It's sort of like the same way that kids get involved with gangs here. They just sort of get in with the wrong crowd. And apparently it's a very big problem. So there are somewhere in the area of 500 neo-Nazi organizations just in Brazil, right? Which is up from 75 in 2015. So in 2015 there were 75. 2023 there are 500. It's a serious problem just in Brazil. So yeah, it makes perfect sense that it's like this is a thing all around the world, not just in the United States. I mean, of course, in the United States we have prominent non-white fascists here, some of them who actually are Nazis. Nick Fuentes, for example, is half Mexican. He is basically a fucking Nazi. He believes in all the same shit that he would say himself that he is not a Nazi. The fucker's a Nazi. The guy's a fucking Nazi, right? Believes in all the same shit. He's a white supremacist at the very least. You also have Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys, who is not white, and is definitely, I don't know if he's a Nazi per se. Guy definitely is a white supremacist. I mean, the Proud Boys is a white supremacist organization. Right? As much as they try to tell you they're not, they fucking are. Sorry, dude. They just are. You have these non-white fascists, non-white white supremacists all over the country in the United States, right? The thing you got to remember is that Hispanic, Latino, right? That's not a race. Okay, that's an ethnic, like ethnicity is what that is. Hispanic. That's an ethnicity. It's not a race. So in Mexico, for example, the ruling class in Mexico, in Argentina, in Brazil, they're all white people. There's millions and millions of white people in Mexico and South America. There's just as many there as there are in North America. It surprises people in America, in the United States. It surprises people to realize this. When you live in the United States, it's like people think in stereotypes. They think everybody south of the border is wearing a sombrero with bullets and shit and like eating Fritos corn chips and running around like fucking, you know, Speedy Gonzales and shit. I'm not making that shit up. I mean, this is what people think in the United States. Fucking racism, right? The United States has a very racist view of the rest of the world. They think everyone in Africa lives in a hut. They think everyone in South America is a fucking bandito. They think everyone in Asia is like working in a rice paddy. I'm not this is I'm telling you how it is. This is what people in America think. These are the stereotypes rather that people in the United States frame the rest of the world in. So, I wish it wasn't true, but it is true. Anyway, but yeah, so those stereotypes are even worse when it comes to white supremacists, of course, because they don't understand this. They don't understand that Hispanic is an ethnicity and that you can have someone who's like, say, a white Brazilian or a white Mexican, and also they would be Hispanic as well. They don't understand that shit, right? So this is why they all flipped out when they saw that this dude was a white supremacist, but he was of Mexican descent. They all fucking that he was Hispanic. Right? They all lost their minds over this shit. These are people you got to remember who look at the world in very black and white terms. Who have they believe in shit like, say for example, the one drop rule. And if you ever heard of that, like the one drop rule that says like, oh, if you have one drop of non-white blood, then you're not white or whatever. These are people that basically, if you're not Northern European or Anglo-Saxon or whatever, then you're not white. And sometimes they don't even consider people like, say, Slavs or Italians to be white. Right? So whiteness is a very confusing thing that is only defined in such a way that it benefits them specifically. And they can't understand, though, oh, hey, somebody else who lives south of the border might also be considered white or might consider themselves white. Want to sort of give you guys an example of that. Here's a comment I came across when I was looking at this, and I kind of saved it about 2 weeks ago. This is on Reddit, of course, in the Political Compass Memes subreddit, which is basically a white supremacist sub. Remember how they called Zimmerman a white Hispanic? Media only wants to continue to stroke fear and division for $, black and black crime kills countless young men every year, but gets no attention because it brings no $. Not to mention it doesn't follow the narrative of that secondary, a white man committing a hate crime. Well, that's another matter, money to be made. I have no doubt they will frame this man as white if they feel they can milk that narrative. By the way, I think Zimmerman is a piece of shit, to be clear. Of course he fucking does, but here, this illustrates what I'm trying to say perfectly well. Zimmerman obviously can't be white because he was Hispanic. To these guys, they don't understand that Hispanic and race are not the same thing. There is no Hispanic race. Latino, Hispanic, those things are ethnicities. Not the same thing as race. They don't get it. This causes sort of a mental block to these guys. Because to them, white means a specific thing. White means blonde hair, blue eyes, German, Norwegian, Swedish. Maybe sometimes English or French, but sometimes not. That's what white means to these people. They don't understand it. They don't. This is causing cognitive dissonance between these people that they can't handle because it's beyond their mental capacity to process this shit. Right. So that's what we got to keep in mind here. It's important to spread the truth about these things, and these are harsh truths that some of us on the left aren't really willing to acknowledge. You know, because that's true too. There are plenty of people on the left who don't understand that there can also be non-white fascists. They don't get that. This is kind of a casualty of identity politics, unfortunately. Right. And I can understand it can be hard to grasp the idea that someone who isn't white would align themselves with white supremacists. It can be hard to understand that. Right. It's kind of the same way that, like, it's hard for me personally to understand why a gay person or a trans person would vote Republican and align themselves with political conservatives. Why would you do that? These are people who are completely against everything, not only everything that you believe in personally, but they are against you even having rights to exist as a human being. Why would you align yourselves with them? Yet you see people like that all the time. Blair White, for example. Perfect example of someone who aligns themselves with a political party and political philosophy, and people who, if given the chance, would at the very least take away her rights, if not take away her life as well. Right? These are the limits when it comes to identity politics. Identity politics have a limit. And I personally think identity politics are not a good way to go. I don't think you should rely on them. You shouldn't just rely on someone who's black, for example, to vote Democratic just because they're black. No. Shouldn't rely on someone who's gay just to vote Democratic, for example. Shouldn't just rely on non-white people to make, right? I think instead, if you want to get these people to vote for you, you have to actually go out and give them the things they want. That's what I think, right? You shouldn't just automatically assume that they're going to, like, politically align with you because of the color of their skin or their sexual orientation or their class or anything like that. I think we do that at our peril because that's just not how real life is, right? It's important to make sure the truth gets spread out there. We also saw, for example, like the tweet I showed you where they showed the wrong guy and they were tweeting the wrong guy's face or whatever. That got all the way up to Newsmax, for crying out loud. Newsmax was doing news segments on this dude and showing the wrong face and all of that stuff. No, you got to fight back against misinformation. When they say it's a culture war, it really is a culture war. And this is one of the fronts in the culture war, is to fight back against misinformation like this, especially when it comes from the white supremacists, because they'll do everything they can to obscure the truth, up to and including just making shit up, right? Spreading the wrong information around there because it makes them look good. That's really what they all care about. These people don't remember, they don't care about the truth. It doesn't have to be true. They just have to say it over and over again. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about people's lives. They don't care about anything like that. They don't care about protecting people. All they care about is winning the culture war, making the other side look bad at the expense of everything. And we can't allow that to stand. Why is it important to make sure the truth gets spread out there? Because if you don't, laws start getting passed. That's what we're seeing right now. Getting back to the beginning of the stream, we were talking about all these anti-trans laws in Florida and Texas. How do you think that shit started? How did you think all of the anti-trans sentiment started by misinformation being spread around. So that's why it's important. It's important to engage, fight back, use all the weapons at your disposal, use social media to your disposal as well, and fight back against misinformation, hate, and bigotry anywhere that you encounter it. Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.